Suppose you find yourself in a situation where stealing the Rolex of your wealthy classmate could provide a substantial financial gain to you as a broke student. What would you do? Or what if you find yourself in a situation in which you are a doctor and in front of you are two patients in critical condition? Saving one patient's life requires sacrificing the life of the other patient. And imagine you are taking your philo midterms alongside your blockmates, and you can help your struggling classmates by sharing your answers with them so they can pass their exams. Would you let the chance slip?
Oh, right. Now that I think about it, all these situations make sense. I could survive and even help broke students like me with the money I'll be getting once I get the Rolex on my hands. And come on, it is impossible to save two lives with just a pair of a doctor's hands. I would have to choose a person either way. In the third situation, girl, if my classmates need my answers, why will it help them? After all, we all just wanted to survive this sem.
I get your point, but in whichever perspective we try to look at during those situations, your actions are still questionable, not to say morally wrong. And this is what we are going to tackle for today's video.
What is deontology? Deontology is an ethical theory that suggests an individual should abide by the set of rules, regulations, and principles to determine if an action is right or wrong. According to deontology, the rightness or wrongness of an action does not rely heavily on the consequences because it is determined by its inherent nature.
Basically, it means that the morally right action should be done even if it may lead to unfavorable outcomes. There are two types of deontology, namely pure deontology and mixed deontology. Pure deontology is when the nature of the act is judged based on its conformity to an immutable moral rule. If the act embodies the moral rule, then it is right. Otherwise, it is considered wrong. Remember that the consequences do not play a significant role when it comes to judging the morality of an action.
This is where the mixed deontology comes in. If pure deontology snubs the result and low-key the motive of an action, mixed deontology is the opposite. Mixed deontology is when the meaning of the nature of the act is not confined to its conformity to moral rules per se. The consequences of the act have some bearing on whether the act is morally right or wrong.
Rule deontologists agree that an act is right only if it is consistent with the moral rule, and wrong if the action is inconsistent with the moral rule, while act deontologists believe that the rules are significant only insofar as they provide the guidelines in the application of specific acts in similar moral contexts.
Wait, this means my answers to the situational problems you mentioned a while ago are still valid, right?
Understandable, but unacceptable. You wanna know why? Let us now delve into Immanuel Kant's ethical system and pure rule deontology. But first, who the hell is Immanuel Kant?
Immanuel Kant, born on the 22nd of April 1724, was a German philosopher during the Enlightenment era of the late 18th century. This man released his first substantial work entitled The Critic of Pure Reason at the age of 57. He is one of the most influential philosophers in the history of Western philosophy, and is known to be the most famous pure rule deontologist whose entire ethical system is founded on one moral rule called categorical imperative. Kant insisted that the moral of an act should not rest on the consequences, either one's own good or the greatest good for the greatest number.
Duty and duty for the sake of duty. This is what Kantian morality is all about. It is a moral philosophy that applies to all individuals, irrespective of their circumstances. It is based on the concept that morality is founded on rationality and the individual's inherent worth. Kant stressed that moral actions are guided by reason instead of emotions.
So, Immanuel Kant meant to say that individuals should act out of a sense of duty, not out of feelings?
Exactly. You see, moral principles are rational principles, and as people who have autonomy or rational capacity, we should know better. Kantian morality is actually based on the principle of universality.
Right. Kant's test of universality is one of his categorical imperatives that asks, can I will that my maxim becomes a universal law? In simpler words, the test of universality makes us ponder over the decisions we make, and if they were to be replicated by everyone else, would benefit society.
The three steps of the universalizability test are: 1. We should state the maxim of our action. 2. Universalize it into a moral law for everyone else to follow. 3. Ask yourself, what will happen once the law is universalized? And if the answer to this test has a dangerous intent when made a universal rule, then the action is considered immoral.
The only criterion of morality is to know first whether an act can be universalized without entering contradictions. The conception of an objective principle is called command of reason. The formula of the command is called an imperative, and all imperatives commands are either hypothetically or categorically. If the action is good only to gain something else, then the imperative is hypothetical. If it is by nature good in itself, then the action is categorical.
Okay, now here are the 5 principal ways in expressing the categorical imperative. First is Huh? Formula 1? Oh, isn't this a famous motorsport? Gosh, have you watched this season's last GP? The one held at Abu Dhabi? Girl, Verstappen was such a monster, finishing P1 like that. And I totally felt sorry for Charles and the whole Ferrari team because they looked like they really wanted the P2 for the
Whoa,
constructors.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Calm down. Hey, EL. You really should stop associating your hyperfixations with every single thing you encounter.
Right, gosh, I'm sorry. So, going back, Formula 1 or the formula of the universal law, Formula 1A or the formula of the law of nature, Formula 2 or the formula of the end in itself, Formula 3 or the formula of autonomy, and Formula 3A or the formula of the kingdom ends are the 5 principal ways of categorical imperative.
Formula 1 emphasizes that we are not allowed to make any concession in favor of our own self-interest. Formula 1A is its subordinate version, which states that you should only perform an action that everyone else in the same situation will do.
Formula 2 says that we must act only upon moral rules that are applicable to the whole of humanity, and never use anybody as a means for attaining your end. While Formula 3 tells us that we have to obey the moral law since it is the law of human reason, and doing the opposite contradicts our own nature.
While Formula 3A simply states that we should never treat a person as a means to an end because people are always ends in themselves.
To summarize, Kantian morality or Kantian ethics is a pure deontological theory that talks about the set of universal moral principles that are applicable to all human beings irrespective of context or situation. This was established by Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher who refers to the principles as categorical imperatives. Categorical imperatives can be expressed through 5 ways, namely formulas 1, 1A, 2, 3, and 3A.
Now, we proceed to humanist ethics, which merges the two ethical traditions, teleology and deontology. Humanist ethics recognizes the consequences of an act, while at the same time accepts that there are prima facie duties that we, moral agents should unconditionally follow.
Man is the measure of all things. Does this sound familiar to you? This humanist dogma was attributed to Protagoras, a humanist philosopher back in the 5th century. This means that the individual human being is the ultimate source of knowledge and value. That is why the term humanism is coined, derived from the Latin word humanitas, which means cultivated intelligence. Humanism recognizes the capacity of man to develop his human potential and, of course, intellect, as it defines his supremacy as a rational being. The man's destiny lies in his own hands.
There was a growing recognition that humanist philosophy is vital to humans' survival, thus leading to the humanist imperative that a man has to develop and reach his maximized potential unconditionally. However, of course, it is impossible to reach your full potential alone in a very short time. That is why there is the theory of man. This presents a view of how a man changes from being an egocentric, attention-deprived child to a sociocentric BM.
The main value premise of humanist ethics talks about the development of human potential being the stuff of morality. Morally significant actions are those that either promote or hinder the development of human potentials. It is our moral obligation to pursue what we believe and see as morally right and act accordingly.
Accomplishing the moral obligation, much more developing the human potential, it is indeed hard and surely requires more than one's self. No man is an island. That is why the duty to your fellow men is established. You must treat the development of the human potentials of your fellow men as your own. Through this, it will be easier to go through the sociocentric orientation. Sociocentric orientation involves a shift from one-sided view of duty to develop one's human potentials to a reciprocal one, to a sociocentric one, aiding in the development of the human potentials.
Society is the natural answer for man's moral quest for the development of his potential. It provides the blueprint for human development. The only way society can ensure that all members of society will be given an equal chance of developing their human potentials will be through the mechanism of structural chances and by differentially distributing opportunities in life.
Society by itself has no power to enforce the will of its members. That is why we seek the help of the government. Government provides guidance and keep things on track in order to achieve an ideal society where all members are provided with opportunities in life. Government must be faithful to the humanist principle of justice.
Whoa, so it really is important to establish an intelligent and upright government, huh? To ensure that all people in the society get to experience opportunities in life and reach their full potential as rational beings.
I think so too. Societal structure plays a huge impact on limiting a man's capacity for human development. The future of every member of our nation is in our hands, considering that we live in a democratic country. And as members of the society, electing incompetent leaders might mean that we failed ourselves in fulfilling the unconditional obligation.
Exactly. Hi. Anyway, that's a wrap up. Thank you for participating in today's discussion. I am Miel Delphine.
And I am Goy Maiwat. We are Group 12 signing off. Have a great day.